Hello there everybody, this is Krista and welcome back to Crochet Witch Tarot. And today I thought it would be fun to kind of share with you, as of late anyway, how I have been using tarot and oracle in my work with the fae and fairies and sort of really keep a focus on how I use my cards to kind of have an open line of communication. Which is, my line of belief there, I suppose. That one can do that. Anyhow, I kind of just have pulled a bunch of decks out that I regularly use for that, so, and then of course didn't really think of any sort of format. So we're just gonna go for it. I think where we're gonna start is generally, when I am doing a reading specifically trying to connect and communicate with that fae energy, I tend to really like to do so through oracle, actually, rather than a fairy-themed tarot. I'm not exactly sure why that is. I think it's just the fairy oracles I have found just feel like, I think it's because they are not fit into the tarot structure, that they can go their own direction, and just they feel to me like they take on that fairy energy a bit more. So we're gonna start with the classic, the one I use most often for this purpose, and that of course is the Froud Fairies Oracle in this cute bag. I can't, with the bugs. So good. Should we zoom in a little? Well, I'm gonna see some other cards around it, of course. But anyhow, this is by far my favorite oracle to use to communicate with that fae energy. And this is one I especially love to bring outside. A lot of the times when I am doing work like that, I really try my best to be outside just because it feels easier for me to connect that way. I don't always go outside because sometimes you just can't, but in general, if I can, I will. So this is definitely my favorite oracle to use for that. And along with it, I do like to pull an oracle and then have a tarot message with it. But what I meant when I was saying before that I like to use a fairy-themed oracle is I pretty much almost never pair a fairy oracle with a fairy tarot, and this goes really for any sort of themed reading I'm doing. Like, I will not put, in general, an animal oracle with an animal tarot deck. I think it's too much of that energy for me, and considering there is not like a Froud fairy tarot, to me, like, each of my fairy decks brings a very different fae energy, and mixing those together just doesn't really make sense in my brain. So what I like to do is I sort of think about the categories that fairies are related to and interact with. So for me, and how I see it, it's very much plants and animals. Of course, they're out in nature, they're going to heavily interact with plants and animals. So that's the energy I like to pull in for the message around my fairy oracles. So, what do I have to show here? We really did not plan this. I'm gonna tell you that. I already have. Oh, okay, so here is one, for example, that I've been playing with recently with this deck. It's been very interesting. Is the Brady Tarot. I've really been liking how these decks work together. I think because the Fairies Oracle, there's just a lot to get into with the guidebook. At least to me, it's a big read every time I use this. You know, there's some cards that I consistently get, like this one actually comes up all the time. So I know him, but you know, many I still go to the book for. So I like how with the Brady Tarot we get these keywords on the minors. It just kind of eases up on the rest of the reading, and I really like using really any animal deck in general, but just right now it's been the Brady Tarot with this to examine that interaction between fae and animal energy, and sort of how those two things kind of work with each other to bring a message or certain symbology, things of that sort. And it's been a cool combo here that I've really been liking. So that is the Brady Tarot. And another type of deck I like to pull in alongside the Oracle, as I said, is a plant. A plant deck. Which, did I bring any plant? Oh yes, okay. So if I want to lean more into that plant energy instead of the animals, most of the time I use the La Flora Tarot, which is a gorgeous deck. I think I mentioned in my April excitements that I've been using this deck a lot with these Seasons of the Witch Beltane, and that is by far a favorite pairing. But I have used it alongside this Fairy Oracle and the other one I have to show as well, as that tarot message to bring in, though, more plant energy, which is something not necessarily new I'm working with, but more intensely working with. Usually I am all about the animals, but I've really been liking the interaction between fairy and plant as of late. So typically when I am doing one of these readings, it will be a single card from the Oracle, and I do like to do 2 tarot cards. Sometimes it's 3, maybe 4, it just kind of depends. And depends on the deck. This La Flora Tarot also tends to feel a bit heavy on the guidebook for me, so I pull less of these. Kind of just depends. But I really like how those interact as well. Now I think, as we just continue talking here, although, ooh, okay, real quick, this is just an unrelated, basically. The deck that also I pull out frequently with this one. This will represent that sometimes it's just I don't know if a general deck is exactly what I'm thinking here, but just, I don't know how to categorize it, but it's the, oh my gosh, what are you called? Memento Mori Oracle. Jeez Louise. Which is just a favorite of mine in general, but I'm telling you, something about that Fae energy just really seems to love this deck, and I really have enjoyed how specifically this Brian Froud Fairies Oracle and the Memento Mori Oracle coincide and just work together, and I really just like the intuitive nature of the Memento Mori with the Brian Froud Fairies, because again, the Brian Froud Fairies is very guidebook heavy. You're getting kind of, it gives you something to think about for sure, but there's a lot to read, there are a lot that you get with that. And so I like pairing it with this Oracle, which is very intuitive to me anyway, to kind of just almost let my brain wander where it's gonna wander when it comes to getting that message, which is really cool. So that is the last I will show with the Brian Froud Fairies. And again, that really is, if I am looking to really directly connect with that energy, that is pretty much what I'm going to be using. But another fairy oracle that I really love, again, this will be no surprise. Oh, come on, get back in the bag, Brian Froud. And that is the Fairy Temple Oracle, which now has its own beautiful bag I'm very excited about. And this deck is just beautiful. Oh my gosh. Andy and I were talking about this deck today, and just, we both were like, we will never get over how gorgeous this deck is. And what I really like about this one is it already pairs together, for the most part, fairy energy with a plant energy. A lot of these are kind of specific plant fairies, which is really cool. If not all of them. I kind of think it might be all of them. So that is a really kind of cool thing that one brings along. And I think that is all for the tarot pairings I have to show. For the most part, I really like bringing in an animal or a plant tarot, but I don't exclusively use tarot for that sort of secondary message I like to get. I do often use a second oracle, so I think let's just go into that. One I've been really, really loving using in a tarot-like way is the Faceted Garden Oracle, which is new to me. I've had the Illuminated Earth for quite some time now, but just never went over to the Faceted Garden. But since I am starting my own garden for the first time, I wanted to test it out. And what I have sort of landed on with this oracle, at least how it works for me, is that it works best using it in a tarot-like way, in that I'm gonna pull more than one card from it. I've really been loving it that way. And I do really enjoy how it pairs with this oracle, because in here we already have that, of course, Fae energy, but we also get that plant energy. So with this one, I don't really feel like I need another kind of specific plant deck. So I like using this one because it really more just gets into that garden energy, and it just almost feels like it supports the message that's coming from here and the energy that this deck is picking up on. And I just think it works really well in that way. And it's, I don't know, I've just really been loving this pairing. And I'm trying to think of how to explain like why I use these different oracles in terms of this and the Brian Froud. Brian Froud's fairies to me feels very wild fae energy, like you're in the woods, they're living in the trees, you know, like kind of that like down and dirty isn't the right term, but that's all that's in my brain, so that's what we're gonna say. Where it's with the Brian Froud fairies, it's this feeling that they're physically there with you. I say you in terms, this is my experience with it. This, however, it feels a bit more of that I'm just kind of being brought into the world. I am being brought into the general energy of it, but I don't necessarily see these fairies on these cards and think like, yeah, you know, it's standing right next to me. Where sometimes I really do feel that way with the Brian Froud Fairies Oracle. So this has been a favorite pairing lately, and it's really to bring in that natural plant energy, but I've really been loving this in relation to working with Fae energy with the garden I am currently trying to build. Maybe that's something to talk about, of why do I choose to to do this work. I guess to say, geez, I say that and I have no plan on what I'm gonna say. So I feel like it goes without saying to just excuse any sort of all over the placeness of this, but you know, that's kind of how it always goes, isn't it? Why do I do that? You know, I really like fairies. I really like that energy. I really enjoy working with the natural world. That's pretty much what, if I am trying to connect to something other than myself, almost always, it's just wanting to connect to the physical world around me. So, a lot of the times, just my local fauna and flora is really, really what interests me. And to go along with that, another pairing I really love, and a deck I just love using alongside a fairy oracle in general, is the Woodland Warden's Oracle. Now this is pretty much always a single card draw as well, so it's like a double oracle action here. But I just think that this oracle in particular works for me in terms of gathering that animal energy. We do also get the plant one here. I tend to prefer to use this one with the Brian Froud fairies, but I think they work together well too. Because mostly these animals are very local to me. And that's usually what I'm interested in connecting to when I'm connecting to that Fae energy. And I do also really enjoy examining how the keyword from the Woodland Wardens connects to we get 3 keywords on the Fairy Temple Oracle. That I think is really, really cool, because a lot of the times there's like interesting tie-ins. Like here we have Fresh Start, Honesty, Gentleness, Hope, with our elk, which has the keyword of Strength. And so thinking of the connection between honesty, gentleness, and hope, and thinking about kind of the strength it takes to be honest, to be gentle, and to have hope, I just think is a really cool tie-in. And so even if, you know, using these to like not specifically want to be like communicating with fairies or something, even aside from that, I think the way that these two pair together in that way is just really, really interesting. So that is the Woodland Wardens. I do realize we're a little all over the place, but we weren't gonna sit and plan this, you know? We weren't gonna do it. Okay, now I don't want to just keep rambling forever here, so I think what we will now get into is... Yes, I am gonna show, I do have, well, I do mostly use those 2 oracles to directly connect with that Fae energy. There are some tarots that I feel do that job as well, that I like to use. I do have, don't get me wrong, I've got many fairy-themed tarots, but to me it's just, I just like fairies, and so that's where that connection is. But these few I have taken out feel like they connect to that realm in some way for me. And so we will start first with the, what are you called? What are you called? Oh my goodness. Tarot of the Hidden Realms. Tarot of the Hidden Realms. Now this one to me feels similarly to the Brian Froud Fairies in terms of it's got that real wild fae energy. Now, a non-specifically fairy-themed oracle I feel like really taps into that energy is the Celtic Spirit Oracle. And it's one that I think pairs really beautifully with this tarot. It pairs well with just so many tarots as well. But if I am going the route of wanting to use this deck, this tarot deck, to connect to that fae energy in more of like a communicating type of way, I mean, look at this. I can't. Then I won't use a fairy-themed oracle. That's like, I realize this has fairies in it, but I mean specifically fairy-themed. I don't know why, that is just the way my brain works, and this is often an oracle that comes out when I'm using a fairy tarot instead of a fairy oracle. I just think it really gets into that energy so well. I think because it's got that Celtic theme to it, so it really keeps me in that world how I see it. And again, I love the 3 keywords that we get on these decks. I just think they work so well together. And really gets to that feeling for me. So that is the Celtic Spirit Oracle. Now, I also have, that I just recently got from the same creator, the Mushroom Spirit Oracle. Now, I feel like, I mean, you know, undeniably, mushrooms do have a lot of fairy tie-ins when it comes to the folklore around fairies. And so I've started using this oracle in the same kind of way as I like using the Celtic Spirit, which is very cool because it is the same creator, I am such a huge fan. They also work magically together, I will say. And so in this way, it's, you know, we're working specifically with that mushroom energy. That's something I like to use alongside this tarot to really, if there's some sort of like message I am trying to get in terms of something like breaking down or decaying, kind of that transformation type energy, because that's what I kind of feel like mushrooms get at. But we are getting into a bit of that plant energy here. So as you can see, just depending on if I want to use a fairy oracle or a fairy tarot, I'm just kind of reversing what I pair it with. So if I'm using a fairy tarot, I'm probably going to be bringing in an oracle that is somehow based around plants or animals. So that is the Mushroom Spirit Oracle and the Tarot of the Hidden Realms. And I think I've got one more tarot to show you. I'm going to give an honorable mention to the Victorian Fairy Tarot. But this one is, I don't often use it in this style of reading. But, I think because of the Victorian style and the tie-in of just the images of Victorian fairies, and the Victorian flower fairies specifically, I do, on the occasion, use this tarot to connect with Fae energy very specifically in relation to plants. And the pairing I've really enjoyed for that as of late is the Victorian Fairy Tarot with the Hedwig Botanical Oracle, which is another newer one for me. But I just think that the space provided in this oracle lends itself really well to this fairy tarot, and just, I don't know, the way that these botanical images are drawn really, I think, relates to that idea in my mind with those Victorian flower fairies. So it just really works. I really like working with the Fae energy surrounding certain plants. I've been having such a good time too, taking a specific card out of this deck of a plant that I'm thinking of getting or that I already have planted now, and just seeing what the energy is around that when as it relates to fairies and how the fairies around me kind of feel about that plant being put there. It's been a really cool little mini practice going there that I just thought would be worth sharing as a bit of an honorable mention. This is something that is new for me, so that's kind of why it's an honorable mention, because that's really all I have to say on the matter. It's been a lot of fun lately, but this is pretty much the only decks that I do that with. So that is the Hedwig Botanical Oracle with the Victorian Fairy Tarot that I just thought I would mention real quick. But the other main tarot I will use that is fairy themed, specifically for fairy communication. Oh no, it's not. I always forget. I guess it's not specifically fairy themed, but haven't we all kind of just said it is? It's the Hush Tarot. Like, it is, right? Why deny it any longer? But this is one that I really, really enjoy to use. I consider it a fairy themed tarot. I think it really connects to that energy so instantaneously. We're getting weird shadows in here. Apologies about the lighting. I didn't set up my light, and we're working by the light of an arrow garden. So do with that what you will. And what else? What other oracles did I really have to show here, though? I do have, oh yes, okay. So the oracle I really like using with this, I tend to use this one. I have used it with a bit with the Hedwig Botanical, and you know what? I should show this other plant deck. We're gonna do that because the decks I really like to use with it Memento Mori, first of all, also works for this one, but it's the druid animal and the druid plant oracle. So this is the animal we have to show here. And I just think that the art style of this really lends itself so well to this deck. I just think visually they match really well. But I really like how the figures in this tarot really feel kind of shrunken down to that small, like, in the grass kind of size, like Bug's Life kind of size. We also get a lot of animals in this tarot, but I don't really see it as an animal tarot, so I will pair it with this oracle. My gosh, I sound like such a hypocrite now. But I don't really focus on the specific animals showing up in this deck because it is just kind of a lot of ambiguous birds sometimes. I guess not really ambiguous. Anyway, I just like them together. I also love that this oracle brings in elemental dragons because that is another aspect of Fae that I am very interested in, have only kind of touched the surface of, so this feels like it gets me into that realm a little bit. But I really like using these together, and while we're at it, let's get the druid plant. Because this, I feel like, is a really, really beautiful pairing. And again, since it just feels like these figures are like that Bug's Life kind of size, pairing it with this plant oracle, just it really, really connects super well. It feels like these figures could be right in the plants being shown in the oracle, which makes this really interesting cohesiveness for me that I just enjoy. And also it's so beautiful, isn't it? So good. So as you can see, there are many decks I like to use for fairy connecting, fairy communication. It is a huge, huge, huge part of my practice, so I'm doing that quite often. Hopefully this wasn't just so confusing. It could be. It might be. Because again, we didn't really go into this with a plan. I've had these out. Now that it's springtime, I really lean into connecting with this energy. I still do so in the winter. It's just not as kind of hardcore. Oh my gosh. As spring and summer. So now that spring is here, the fairy decks have been out. I've been doing readings all the time. And so I've just had these out. I thought it'd be fun to just kind of share a little update, but also like how I like to use them together. But if you have any questions, definitely let me know if there is some confusion. I'm happy to clarify, but other than that, I think that is all I have to show today. I hope you're all having a great weekend, and I will see you again very soon.